welcome back to the Star Family Wisdom podcast. I'm Jenna Layden, the founder of Star Family Wisdom and also a former global vice president for Whole Foods Market. Star Family Wisdom is a paradigm shifting podcast community and modern day mystery school for your spiritual and cosmic evolution. And if you are new here with us, welcome. If you tuned in last season, thank you for coming back. Today, we have a really fun chat with my friend, Chelsea Craig. Chelsea is an intuitive medium and also supports people in their intuitive health and healing. And interestingly enough, Chelsea and I became friends before we realized we had an ET connection. So after being friends for a couple of years, actually, we started talking about some of the more extraordinary experiences we've had. And as my psychic abilities and star family connection have developed over the last couple of years, I would turn to Chelsea from time to time for a little guidance, since she's already been on the path of being an intuitive medium for a long time. And in those conversations, we quickly realized, well, Chelsea has ET experiences too. And she is in contact with a group that she calls the Council. So we're going to talk about that today. Chelsea is a board-certified athletic trainer with a master's degree in kinesiology and behavioral sciences, with over a decade's worth of experience in sports medicine, physiology, rehabilitation, and women's health. She's a licensed healthcare practitioner and provider in Missouri, and she combines all of her knowledge and life experience and intuitive gifts in energy medicine work, and supports women specifically in increasing their vitality through the use of ancient practices like acupuncture and body work. And she supports people in a variety of health and spiritual issues and really focuses on the holistic system of mind, body, and spirit. We know now that if we ignore the spirit part of that system, we're only going to be focusing on Band-Aids. So it's really important that we understand the whole system and how it's working together. Over the last year, Chelsea has become a homesteader, and she has developed a beautiful farmstead in Missouri with her husband and two hippie wanderlust boys. And she is just finding her power now and supporting so many people in their best life and creating their best life. So today's conversation is going to be a fun one, and we're going to talk a little bit about our grandmas, because Chelsea's grandma left the earth on Christmas, a special day, actually, because it was her birthday, her grandma's birthday. So we shared some communication on Christmas about that, and we haven't had a chance to talk yet about it. So this is our first time to process and share with each other about that. And my intuitive connection with one of my grandmas specifically has been increasing over this last year. And I've learned that one of my gifts in this life is communicating with the dead, with people who have left the earth. So I have been stepping into that more and exploring that work. And today we'll talk a little bit about that as it relates to our grandmas. So enjoy this conversation. If you have not yet, subscribe if you're on YouTube so you don't miss any new episodes as they come out this season. We've got a great lineup of guests and fun conversations that we'll be sharing with you. And leave a comment. Let me know if there are any topics or people or guests that you want to see on the show this season. We're just getting ramped up, so we've got time to incorporate your feedback. And again, thank you for being here and being part of this community. And for those who are on the path of spiritual mastery, on the path of spiritual initiation, we have two programs this year that you might be interested in. I'll be leading the Rites of the Moonai Key Shamanic Initiation group program starting January 15th. That's a 10-week program where you receive powerful energetic transmissions. You can almost think of it as 10 weeks of energy healing sessions where we're going to be working on transforming and upgrading your energy field to become the new human, to embody the light codes of Homo luminous, the enlightened, the illuminated human. And over the course of the 10 weeks, we'll do shamanic practice together. We'll engage in different shamanic teachings, and you'll have homework and lots of new tools that you'll take away each week to begin incorporating into your practice. So if you have been interested in stepping onto the shamanic path or deepening your spiritual practice, this would be a great opportunity for you. So you can find the link to that in the notes below. And we're also launching a new course at the end of January called the Isis Initiation and Syrian Energy Activation course. This is intended to support you in transforming your energy field, very similar to the shamanic initiation, but through the lens of working with goddess Isis and the Syrian star system. So this is intended to activate your connection with Sirius, activate your memories of times and ancient civilizations on Earth and times you might have lived in the Syrian star system, because I bet if you're here and you're watching this, you have had experiences in other civilizations, and this course will help you activate those memories while we do transformational work to clear old programming, clear heavy energy and density from your field, reprogram your mind, and balance your masculine and feminine energies so that you can truly come into divine union with the universe, with yourself, and remember your power as God. So this course is designed to give you a flavor of the initiation practices in ancient Egypt while we incorporate a variety of practices and teachings from all of our spiritual traditions around the world, because they all stemmed from the root teachings that were delivered by the star races before they left. So that course will be out on January 30th. It's pre-recorded. It's a 7-week course designed to move you through the 7 chakras. So you'll be able to follow along each week with the practices and move through your chakras energetically, move up the Nile River through the temple complex in Egypt energetically. And then you can come back to the material and continue to do the activations and the practices as time goes on, because you'll have lifetime access to it. So that's a pre-recorded course. You can take it your own pace. The shamanic initiation will be live for 10 weeks. And we'll also offer another one later in the year if you aren't able to take advantage of this one. So we'll get into the conversation with Chelsea now. Thank you for being here and Happy New Year. We'll see you on the other side. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome.
Jenna, oh my gosh, thanks for having me. So excited.
It's so good to see you again. And I was telling everyone before we started this part of the podcast that we haven't really had a chance to catch up yet since Christmas, and since the last few weeks have just been a whirlwind of holiday things and grandmas.
Yeah.
Leaving. So yeah, I told everyone your grandma left. I'm sorry for your loss, Chelsea.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I shared with you, I think I sent you one of the pictures. I mean, I was told as early as June that that was the day she was leaving. And I was able to tell my mom and my aunt that that's what we needed to anticipate. That's what the universe was calling, and my grandpa was calling. And so, you know, regardless of heads up, it's still hard, but it was really beautiful to, one, I mean, I had that documented in text that was what we needed to prepare for. So just a testament to the magic in the universe.
Yeah.
But yeah, still a lot to process.
How did your mom react? I mean, I know your family knows about your intuitive gifts, but that's a big one to be able to have that sort of future sight, and know the timing. I'm sure they like trusted you, when you shared that, but I'm sure it was still also kind of like shocking when it happened.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when my grandpa transitioned as well. When he was in the process, and one of my aunts was really struggling, who I'm pretty close with. And I was told when her and I were chatting, that we had 3 days, and this was about a year ago now, that we had 3 days to say our goodbyes. So, I mean, those moments kind of happen here and there, but it does give solace to everybody. It gives peace and comfort to know that there's something greater than us, and that something carried them with them wherever auric field that they're on.
Yeah.
So it did help, especially my mom. My mom tries to tap in. She's not, I mean, we're all intuitive, so it's not like she isn't, but it just gave her peace.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like with any of those transitions, it's like that's all we want to know, right? Is that we can still connect, and that they're happy, and they're free, and that they're moving on to like the next part of their journey, which is going to be an even more beautiful one than what they experienced here. And yeah, I think that's like such a beautiful thing to be able to offer that to others, even when you're grieving.
Yeah.
How does it come through for you? So you talked about how like you got the date, and you had this like intuitive kind of heads up about your grandpa, and when that was going to happen, that was more imminent. Like, how does that show up for you? Because like you said, everyone has some, psychic, extrasensory perception abilities. It's just a matter of like learning how to tune into that. So I'm curious, like how that comes through for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have like 2 eyeballs and a nose and 2 ears, just like you. So I'm not any different than you. I just have a lifetime of listening. I just tell people I'm a really good listener, and listening doesn't tend to come through in this like external audio voice. And if it does, it tends to sound like my own. It may have more of like a masculine undertone or a feminine undertone, but it tends to come through in our own voices. But it comes through in so many different ways, and we tend to disregard that those are how messages are received. Like oftentimes it comes through my memories, and I'll just have to translate what it is they're trying to show me through my memories about this person or this moment or this thing. It'll come through and just like a physical feeling in the body, and differentiating between the right side and the left side, the right side being masculine, representing the masculine, the left side being the feminine. It'll come through in a voice where I will hear it will sound like my own, but I've learned to tune in enough that it will sound masculine or feminine. It'll come in through the right ear or the left ear, which helps me understand when I'm channeling for a person, whether it's their maternal connection, the left side being maternal, the right side being the paternal. So I'll hear it in one ear or the other. If it's a divine connection, I'll kind of hear it above me in like a higher octave. Let's see. Our imagination is our direct connection to divine. So oftentimes it's just me watching whatever is playing in my mind, which will help me understand what's going on with a person, place, or thing. So it comes in so many different ways. Numbers, animals. It's less about the number and like, oh, it's 111. It's an angel number. It's like, well, it is an angelic number. There's so much symbol to numbers. The numbers aren't quantity. They are energetic symbols, but it's what you were experiencing before you notice that number, before your attention was drawn to that animal that's trying to communicate with you. It's that before moment that they're like, go back to that memory, go back to that moment, thing that you were feeling or thinking about, and pay closer attention to that, because that's why you were drawn to that number or that animal or that.
Right. I love looking at it like that. I've said that too, where it's like the universe's way of saying, pay attention to this, like pay attention to this pattern that's showing up, pay attention to these thought patterns that you're having, and tune in and like dive deeper to figure out like what's under the surface there. Yeah. I remember when we did our acupuncture session, because Chelsea is an acupuncturist, like I shared in the intro. She gave me a session in, I think, September, which was my first acupuncture session, actually. And this year, I had also been doing a lot of work with one of my grandmas specifically, who had passed on, a number of years ago. But as my intuitive gifts have been opening over the last few years, it's become clear that one of my gifts is talking with the dead, and being able to, form that sort of connection. And so I've been like tapping into that throughout the course of this year and working with her more on the legacy that she left and how she can support, my work in this life and support the healing of my family and all that stuff. And when we were doing the acupuncture session, I remember you talked about getting a feeling in your left side, and she came through during that session, because there was this something, that I was working through at that time that she needed to like impart. And I thought that was so fascinating how it comes through for you that way. Like it's very much tied to your feminine side of your body and your feminine energy. And then that helps you kind of discern. So I remember first you were saying, I think a grandma's here.
Yeah. And just a disclaimer. So I'm not an acupuncturist. I'm an acupuncture specialist. So through my medical license, through sports medicine, I'm able to provide acupuncture. Only a licensed acupuncturist who's gone through an acupuncture certification or degree can call themselves that.
Got it.
Use my other training to be able to do acupuncture. So just a little disclaimer there, just to always clear that. But yeah, that's another really beautiful way of looking, and it's a translation. It's like I always use the analogy of like, there's all these puzzle pieces that are falling together that I know are yours, that it's almost like I went to Goodwill and I got a puzzle that I know all 50 pieces are there, but the box isn't there. And so by the end of it, you're going to be able to complete the puzzle once we try hard enough, but you have you have nothing as far as background. You have no picture of what it's meant to look like, which is almost more fun because it is this true endless adventure. And yeah, it's even those moments where people say like, oh, I feel like I just saw something out of the corner of my eye. Like, which eye did you see it out of? Because that's talking to you, that's communicating with you. And so I will see energy, light, a person in their fullest, either behind you on your left side or behind you on your right side, which helps me delineate how they're connected to you, or I'll feel them behind me on my left side or to my right side, which again, it's just a translation. And once you're tuned into it and you trust, the only thing that separates me from so many other people is like, I have full trust in knowing that whatever is coming through is a message for you or myself, and I don't have to question it. It's like the to-do list. When you write your to-do list down, you just know that you trust yourself. You wrote down your to-do list, and now there's more space in the mind to listen to or do whatever else about your day. Like, you're not going to forget your to-do list. You wrote it down. And so I just know that like, I don't have to think about your right side. I just know that the right side is the masculine. So I can just trust that whatever's coming through is going to be something specific about the paternal connection or the connection that you may have with the masculine side of yourself or people in your life.
I love that message about trust, because I think that for most of us is the hang up, like that's where we block, right? That's where we block the intuitive gifts. That's where we block, higher guidance from our higher self, or from our non-physical team, or from Star Family even. And it's like, we all go through that phase of doubt, as we're starting to perceive more. And it's this process of really just leaning into trusting what's coming through and discerning, because like we have ego involved, and, we have to discern, right? Like where something might be coming from like an ego, driven place versus like truth. One thing I've started to do over the last year is asking to see truth. And like in those moments, if I did have a little bit of doubt coming through, or if I just felt like, is my ego getting in the way here? I would just tune into my higher self and ask to see truth. like, show me truth here. Help me get beyond my ego if that's what's going on. Help me just lean into what is true in this moment. And that's been an interesting process to like see how that's evolved and how that has helped me in these moments, like on Christmas, you know, when you shared the news. And you know, I think when anyone shares news like that, your first reaction is, you know, what can I say, you know, that would be helpful? And, or should I say anything, you know, is this thing I have to say even helpful? And I had one of those very brief moments because I felt like I needed to say something to you that was very specific.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, no, you know, I was like, no, this isn't me. Like that, I need to say this. I need to just say this to Chelsea and not, you know.
Yeah. It was so beautiful. It's so like, and that's the thing of it. So one thing you said that I want to point out about the ego is like, the ego isn't this inflated sense of self. The ego isn't like big penis syndrome. The ego is truly just trying to protect us. So when you're asking for truth, you can also acknowledge the ego of like, how is she trying to protect you? Because she brought you here to this very now moment. But she's not a problem. She's not this inflated sense of self. She's actually just like trying to protect you in these learned behaviors that you've experienced over a lifetime. So when you acknowledge, it's almost like acknowledging the toddler, acknowledging the child of like, no, it's okay. You're safe. Well, what's happening for you? Or no, we're not having the juice box right now. We acknowledge the thing. So then we acknowledge the person. So it's the same thing with the ego. The ego is just a part of yourself, the primal brain that's brought you here and has learned all these things over a lifetime to protect you. So when you acknowledge her, it will be quicker, easier to receive what the truth is. Because maybe she is trying to protect you in that moment of like, no, this is the truth. This is part of the message that you're trying to connect with. There's a pattern here. So looking at the patterns, acknowledging her, and then the truth will be like, it won't be something that needs to be discerned. It will literally just be this thing that you just know.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I love that. And yeah, it's not a battle with the ego. The ego, I like to talk about how the ego, I have a cat jumping on my back right now. If you can see me wiggling around, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me wiggling around because there's a cat my attention. Maybe it's a grandma trying to say hello. I lit some incense for our grandmas on the ancestor altar before we started to say hello to them. I like to talk about how the ego is like, it's designed to keep us in an experience of separation. And most of our doubt comes from our experience of separation from source, right? Oh, did you see that? Oh my gosh, that's funny. Oh my goodness. Well, I should just do a little show and tell now since everyone is watching this.
Hello, guy.
This is Timmy. Timmy came into my life about 2 months ago. His formal name is Timaeus, named after Plato's work, Timaeus. Nerd alert. But anyway, yeah, the ego is designed to keep us in a state of separation. And when we're in that state of separation and we're not feeling fully connected, right, with our source, we feel like we're, not one with life. When we're in that state, it's really difficult to trust, so it is this like process of coming back into that like state of oneness and connection with source. And as we like go through that process, I feel like it becomes easier to trust, so it's like when the ego is also kind of showing up, it's also like part of the design, because we're supposed to be experiencing this state of separateness in the third dimension, but we have this opportunity to come back to like our connection and that sense of oneness and truly trust in life. That's the journey. I think like that's ultimately the journey, right?
Right. And if the ego was sending out red flags, it wasn't like, oh, don't connect with higher self. It's like, you need to freeze, flight, or it wasn't a matter of talk to my heart right now and see if this bear is going to eat me, or if this, it wasn't that. It was literally like everything shuts down, your digestion shuts down, like things slow down to the point of survival so that you can tap into the immediate safety. But we live there now. We don't live in this like, okay, well, we've tapped in, it's safe right now, let's move on. Like, okay, let every other sense turn on. We live in that egoic state. We live in that state of fight or flight. And that's so programmed, that's so intentional, because then we don't tap in. We're not able to tap into higher self. And then we become this endless consumer who doesn't have enough, doesn't connect with the self, doesn't know what the self is. So it's very intentional that we do live there, stay there. And so when you do break free of that, it is very much a transition of like, am I crazy? Am I hearing things? Like, should I tell people? Should I do this? Like, there is this like self, because it's really, my dad always says, to find oneself, you must lose oneself, which is what explicit from Jesus. When any sort of spiritual teacher would say that, because that's what you have to do to be able to fully embrace and hear all the things, not just the ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about how we get stuck in this cycle of lack of connection to self. Like, I love how you put that. At the core, at the foundational, level of what we're talking about, connection to source is connection to self. And we don't talk about it enough like that, I think. And so, it's like coming back to that connection to source is coming back to yourself.
Because you are the physical manifestation of God in this now moment. You are the creator. And if you knew that at all times, there'd be no point for anything. There'd be no point for any name brand, government, policing. There'd be no point to that, because you would see me as God and I see you as God. And that's what that is endless love. That's endless possibility. That is creator creation. And if you saw me all the time as that, which I'm just a reflection of you, like, could you just imagine the planet we would live on?
It would be heaven on earth. Like, we would literally manifest heaven on earth. Like, that's what it would be, right?
And that's what it was. Somebody just popped through on your right side then when you said that. So I don't know who that is.
I know who it was. Okay. So on my ancestor altar, I've been working with 4 primary grandparents over this last year. And recently, in the last few months, all 4 got an assignment for what they were to like support in the collective energy field of the family, in my personal energy field and evolution. And one of my grandfathers, I think you were picking up on Grandpa Roger. Grandpa Roger is assigned to, this is like my corporate background coming into play, like assigning my grandparents, tasks. So Grandpa Roger is assigned
up there, so I can get it done down here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Grandpa Roger is assigned to divine union and supporting my journey to divine union with my partner, which is also a journey about bringing heaven on earth, right? And divine union within ourselves. So I bet it was him coming through.
And what's so fun is, like, with people, if they do watch this on YouTube, they're going to see that in that moment of, like, I don't know, it's like 11, maybe 18 my time, which is you're 2 hours behind me. Like, they're going to see this little wisp of light. And if you're paying attention, and they just went there again. So they'll see them. They'll see a little bit come through if they're really paying attention. And what's fun is when I do my virtual sessions, I record them as well. And there's several moments of where I'm like, I just want to ask, are you home alone? Or was there somebody who just walked in front of your computer, or something happened? And a lot of times they're like, no, I'm just sitting here, or are you by a window that a neighbor could walk by? No, like, when you watch this again, you're going to witness that what I am saying is real, because you will see it's not a shadow, but there's it's an alteration of light that you directly.
I know what you mean, because I've been starting to see that as I've been doing work with spirits and ancestors. I'm starting to see sparks of light show up at times when someone's coming through, or sometimes I'm seeing, like the actual figure of the person, which has been interesting. So thanks, Grandpa Roger, showing up for heaven on earth today.
Yes. And that's the other really beautiful thing to acknowledge, Jenna, is that when you acknowledge it, when you bring gratitude to it, you thank the message, you thank the messenger. They're like, oh, you're plugged in. We'll send you more. We will send you more information. We know that we have your attention. We know you saw the number 1122. We know you saw it, that we can send you more. We can keep you plugged in because we know we have your attention. And so then when they know that you're listening and they don't have to keep sending you the same test and the message over and over again, then it's like, boom, we can just clear this up right here, right now.
Right. It becomes easier. Like you just like, when they're coming through and when they're trying to communicate, or, when there's like that moment to pay attention to something. Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, just also back to trust.
Have you been able to connect with your grandma since she left?
So I've heard a little bit from her, but more so what's really beautiful, and I don't know if I shared this story I don't think I did. I don't think I've even told Rebecca, our mutual friend, that a couple weeks ago, I mean, December felt like the dark night of the soul again for me. And I was asking everyone, all the ones, everyone, universe, guides, friends, everyone, like, please send me something. Like, I'm really struggling. I need a little breadcrumb. Like, I feel like I'm not getting any breadcrumbs. And I'm a lover of all things thrifting. And so I belong to this email list of all the estate sales that are like a 20-mile radius of my house. And I get one every day. There's hundreds of sales a day. Like, it's insane. So I get an email every day. And it was like 2 Wednesdays ago that I was like, you guys, I'm about done. Like, I need like something so in my face that like is undeniable. And so I'm looking at this email and I click on the link for the first couple of sales. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's right before Christmas. I don't need to go buy anything. It's just chill out, Chelsea. And I look at the first couple of links and it'll show pictures of what's going to be at the sale.
Right.
And okay, stop. So then I'm about to delete the email and I get this intense high pitch. It's not even a ringing. It's just like a singing, a high pitch note in my right ear, which is a masculine connection. It's my dad's side trying to come through for me. And my grandmother was also an artist, just like yours. And I have a couple of her pieces, but I'm like the youngest, I'm the second youngest grandchild by far. So most of her pieces either are with other family members or my cousins and siblings who are older than I am. And so I have 2 of her pieces and I get this ringing in my ear and it's from her. And I'm like, okay, there's something I shouldn't delete this email yet. So I go to the next link and look at this estate sale. I'm like, what am I looking at? Okay, so I'm scrolling through and that pitch hits me again. I'm like, oh, I'm right there. And sure enough, Jenna, I kid you not, you can't even make this up. One of her pieces of art is for sale at this estate sale.
No way.
I can't even make this up.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
So I'm looking at this picture and I am like, that is hers. I just know it. I know it. She had this thing where she would buy old antique ironing boards, the old wooden ones and old metal and wooden ones. She would paint on them, either a Santa or she'd paint this life size something. And there it is. It's right there. And so I call the people for the estate and I'm asking, like, can you please give me information about this piece? Like, it's so blurry. Like, I can't see a signature, anything. Like, no, won't tell me anything. I'm like, well, who's the sale through? Like, the family? And like, nope, don't tell me anything. I'm like, can you just hold it? I'm done with work at 1 o'clock. I will like be right there. And at first they're like, no, we don't do holds. I'm like, no, you guys, you don't understand. Hold this for me. And luckily they did. And I go there and I just pick it up and I lose it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I cannot even believe it. And my siblings were saying like, no, I don't think that's hers. Like hers is more detailed. I'm like, no, this is like a picture of a picture of a picture. And so when I pick it up and I take a picture of it, this is again, like paying attention to everything else that's going around in your situation. I take a picture of it to send to my siblings and I take it at 143. And 143 we all know is like, I love you. But 43 and 34 are like my 2 most magical numbers because I'm a 7. Like 7s are the most divine numbers to me. And I know when I witness those numbers that I'm right there. I'm right there. And so I'm, you know, you can't just make this up. I can't like, oh, I'm going to plan to send it at 143. I take the picture at 143, which I mean, just in that moment, I'm like overwhelmed with emotions. Like, how in the heck did I find this in the middle of nowhere, Iowa? Or I'm from Iowa, but I find it in Missouri. No family members are around. The woman at the estate sale finally told me like, oh, the last name of the person. And that's the name of a family that grew up next to my grandma. So
Oh
it
my
was
God. Oh my
so
God. So yes, it was hers.
yeah, yeah, I
That's
know.
incredible.
I
That's incredible.
know.
So yes, she was like, hello, I'm here. I'm still
Yes,
here.
yes, I'm here. We are here. Like, yes, you're in
Oh,
it, which is like such a, I mean, that's truth to what I had been told. And I think I had told you a while ago too, like beginning September, I've been saying it for almost 3 years now, like September of this last year was going to be, and we're not quite done yet. We're still in that like dark night of the soul, collectively, energetically, personally, cosmically, through the end of March, that I needed to just like hold on and buckle up. I knew that was coming, but I'm not impervious to any of the energy. And it was just a reminder, like, no, you've got to experience this too. You are also human. You're in it now, kind of before more of the collective is there, so that you can hold space on the other end of it. And so it was that little boost of confidence, that little boost of like, okay, they are listening. I'm not alone. Even when it feels alone, we're never alone. But like
yeah.
just that breadcrumb that I really, really needed.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. And such a good reminder, I think, for the audience to like ask, like we're like ask, like it's on us to ask for that help, to ask for the guidance, the signs, and ask for like the undeniable signs, and yeah, it's like there's times where we're supposed to be just doing our human thing and not just operating in the higher dimensional realms, totally, right? Like I think there's times where it's like purposeful, right? Where we're not getting as much communication because we're meant to just be focused on the lessons we're learning and the life stuff that's going on, as humans. But yeah, like when you need it, it's there. Like when you need it, your team, the universe, they're going to come through for you. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And again, like all the spiritual teachers, I mean, we can rely on Jesus because he's one of the biggest ones. And one that I think most people are familiar with is that he very much said, ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
That even in the Old Testament, that's written so many times in so many different ways, is ask and you shall receive. It's explicit, meaning like that is part of the teaching, the preaching of what we're here to do is ask and you shall receive. We do have responsibility in this experience. So we're not victims of being human, and we aren't just like wandering about just in this chaos. It's very much a choose your own adventure, and you have responsibility in it, but you can also ask, like, show me,
Yes.
show me. I know you're showing me something, I just don't know what it is. Like when they
Yes.
communicate with me through my memories, I'm like, okay, you showed me a memory of my siblings, but is it my siblings that you're showing me? Like I acknowledge the message, I just don't know what it means. So you're gonna
Right.
have to show me it again, or show me in a different way, and it'll come through. Boom.
Yes. One of my favorite phrases or asks is reveal the way, right? Like if it's like, there's this like place you're supposed to get to, or there's this like end goal, but you're just not sure of the in between, it's like, just reveal the way, show me the way, like show me the next couple of steps on the path. And I love what you talk about not being a victim of the human experience. One of the channeled messages that I've been following that I've really been enjoying is by a group called Larkma, and they are a Pleiadian ET group. And they talk about the co-creative process and how, while yes, we all have, personal responsibility, it's really this like 50-50 partnership, right? Like the universe is responsible for 50% of the experience, the collective energy essentially. And then we are responsible for the other 50%. And that 50% we can directly control, through the programming of our minds, our energy field, asking, right? Like asking's the big one we forget about. And I think that's also a good message for star seeds and people who have or are aware, of their star family connection, because they're part of our support system, the ETs and the star family that we know from other times and places. They can come through for us too, but we have to ask. Like we have to be explicit about wanting intervention, wanting them to be part of our life affairs here on Earth, right? It's like that non-interference clause, right? Like we're not going to interfere with your life if you don't ask.
Yeah, and there's so much, and again, it comes back to responsibility. Like you have to be ready to take responsibility of what they may be showing you, or knowing that there is communication coming through and that we tend to block it ourselves of like, whoa, well, like, no, I want it this one way though. Like it's supposed to come through in this one way. And
Right.
no, like actually we're trying to like, I always like to tell people like, you're always on the path. It's a choose your own adventure. This human experience is a choose your own adventure. It's all for play. Like you witness a child and they're just playing and exploring and it's so fun. And that's what it's meant to be as like an adult as well, is it is this truly choose your own adventure. But the universe may have a door locked for a reason. It's burning on the other side. And if you just looked over to the other side, there's like rainbows and unicorns over here, but you're so focused on this one door
Yeah.
that you're pushing yourself through another burning building. You're like, wonder why you can't get out of the cycles. Like, well, this door was locked. We were trying to wait so that it could become soil again. We wanted you to walk through that path, but you didn't witness this other door that was wide open and beautiful, but you're so focused and like forcing your one way, our one human mind, or one what we perceive as the way, because it is again very intentional to keep us stuck in place and keep us disconnected from one another, from higher self, from other galaxies, from other places, people, beings. And so then you end up walking on freaking through fire again, and you're like, why does this keep happening to me? Like, well, just sit down for a moment, first of all, and realize that yes, there is responsibility in this whole thing of when you do ask, be ready to receive, but then also know like it's a choose your own adventure. It is truly a choose your own adventure. And you can always go back. Like it's those old Goosebump books, you know, and you're like, oh, I'm going to choose chapter 24. Like, oh, I didn't like chapter 24. I'm actually going to go ahead and go back and read chapter 18 because that ending I didn't like. It's like, perfect. Go back. There's no hard feeling. There's no wrong. There's absolutely no failure. It just is. It just simply is. That's it.
Yeah. And sometimes I think choosing this door over this door, right? When this is the door we're comfortable with, we've been repeating this pattern over and over and over, right? So we're so focused on it. Like it seems like an easy switch, right? But that can be like a huge repatterning and change, you know, for us as humans and just naturally because of how we get wired, right? For our comfort zone, it's hard to like make that change sometimes. And it requires like getting that like willpower up and that gumption to say, okay, I'm gonna let this go. I'm gonna stop focusing on this. And that's where the work comes in. Like that can be some work sometimes to like make that switch. But that's where those like huge payoffs can come in. Like in shamanic practice, we talk about like making a quantum leap. You know, it's like you can tap into some big possibilities, you know, with the universe, and you can manifest some really incredible stuff. But you've got to be willing to do the work to make that quantum leap, to make that change, to get out of your comfort zone, to let, you know, old stuff die away. And that's the work. Like that's the spiritual work, you know, we're here to do, I think. But like paying attention to these other doors that are available is like the first step, you know, to know, oh, I've got all these other options.
Yeah.
I don't have to stay focused on this.
Yeah, where you're struggling is where you're discovering. That's why I always tell people, like, you're actually not struggling. You're just discovering something new. And maybe and it's always going to unfold in two different ways. Whether it's you're stuck in place and the wheels just like keep spinning and spinning and spinning. That's where the patterns keep repeating. And that's where you have to acknowledge like, okay, I'm in a pattern. Or you are discovering something completely new, that you're being pulled in a new direction and maybe through a new door. And that's where you'll find like, it may be challenging, but there's always little breadcrumbs. There's always little reaffirmations of like, okay, I don't know what it looks like, but I know that there's something here.
Right.
Versus, I got here again. Like I'm spinning again. I'm like in that same thing. Like, how did we get here again at the same time this year? Like, okay, where you're struggling is actually where you're discovering something new, whether to get out of an old pattern or to evolve into something different, something new, a new door. And it's a completely energetic. It's a completely different energetic when you say struggling versus discovering. Like it's a completely different energetic, and it's the same way of when you start translating in a way of adding and versus but, because and when you look even just in a sentence, it's a continuation of. It may be a complete different direction in a sentence, but you're adding to it. A but is a hard stop. You're telling the universe like, nope, I know better. I know better. I've experienced this before. I know better. And is, look, I don't know what you're telling me. I don't know what's coming through. And I still trust that you are going to show me.
Right. Right. And there's so much support that starts to show up when you like find that and moment, right? When you're willing to just take the next step, you're willing to make the change, you're willing to break the old pattern, whatever it is. It's like you said, you're going to get the little breadcrumbs along the way to help you get there. Like you still have your responsibility, to take those steps, but you're going to get that support. I want to talk a little bit about your ET experiences. Since you just mentioned our Pleiadian friends and some of the guidance that they're bringing through. And I told the audience in the intro how it was kind of fascinating to me that we had become friends and knew each other for a couple of years before we even realized, or before I realized that you had, this really profound experience one time and have felt this connection too, to ET. So I'd love for you to share with the audience that story you told me about the lights, and because that was, I think that was like one of your first big moments, right? Of having what would have been kind of like an extraterrestrial experience, right?
Yeah. I was like, okay, wait, which experience do you want me to tell you? Because there's so many, but now, and I have learned that there's two separate consciousness that I communicate with. One is the Council of Seven Sisters. Those are the Pleiadian sisters that are very much guiding through one consciousness. And then there's also the Council of Light, which I realized I thought they were the two of the same, and I would call them the same thing, but they have since distinguished themselves as two different consciousness. And the Council of Seven Sisters are the ones who showed up first. And it's just, it made just so much sense of why I've always been, since I was little, so connected to like Greek mythology and the number 7 and all of these things. It just made so much sense. And it's only been about the last 2 years or so that the Council of Light has made themselves much more known in the separation of. But the story that you're speaking of is, it's still so wild to even recollect today, is like, so I had this feeling, I think this was 2 years ago. I had this feeling like that my 2 boys and we were going to be home for the 4th of July. And I was like, let's just go up to Iowa. Let's just go see my family. Like, I don't know why we're just supposed to go there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope nothing's happened to my family, but didn't feel that energy that I have felt before. And so the boys and I have 2 little boys, go up to Iowa to my parents' little farm community. And I just had this feeling like, let's build a fire outside. Like my parents live in a really small town, so it's not a true farm. It's just a little farm community. It's like 600 people. So they have 2 acres, but it's in town. So we don't have a fire pit. They didn't have any of that stuff growing up, but my dad had a grill, a smoker. And I was like, let's just make a fire in their driveway. I don't know why. Like, I've never done this before, but I just feel like we're supposed to sit outside today. And it was the 3rd of July. It wasn't quite the 4th. And my boys are just running around being feral little children as they are. And I'm building a fire in my parents' driveway, which in town is kind of ridiculous. But we're just sitting there. My dad gets home and he's like, what the hell what are you doing? Like, I don't know. He's like, you used my good cherry wood. Like, that's my smoker wood. I'm like, I'm sorry. We're supposed to sit here. And so we're sitting and it's dusk and the sun's going down, and him and I are having just a really nice conversation. He's very intuitive as well. And so we're just like bantering back and forth with the universe together. We channel together, and off in the horizon, there's 15 lights, and they're all spaced out very intentionally. And it looks like it's just 15 airplanes that are flying towards us, but they're too low to be airplanes. And they are exactly the same distance apart from each other. And my dad and I are like, what is going on? And you just see him, he goes, they're here again. My dad has had so many interactions, so many encounters. And he's just like, he kind of, he pays attention. He's like,
I love it. He's like, oh, hey guys, what's up?
Yeah, old story. And I'm like, what is happening, thinking it's like Independence Day, like, oh my God, they are here. They're literally here. Knowing that they're here, but also
That is funny that it happened on Independence Day.
oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah. So they are flying towards us off on the horizon. I couldn't even tell you how far away they were, but close enough to be able to count them all and to realize like they are specifically placed in like the exact same distance from each other in a line across the sky. And then all of a sudden they all stop. And one by one, they start flying up rather than towards us. They start flying directly up. And it's like, it's almost like you know the old snake game on your phone, how like they would all like one like, at a time would like start to go around. It's one at a time, they're going up, and it's all very at the same moment, they're all in the same distance until they're all exactly in a line going up rather than towards us.
Wow.
All 15 of them are going up. I'm trying to record it on my phone. The light will not show. It's like very intentional for some reason. Like they're close enough that I could have seen them, but they wouldn't show up on my phone. And we're all like, my dad, my two boys, we're all like watching this happen. So I'm like, I'm not alone. I didn't just witness it myself. And there's one point where they're all flying up, and one of them in the middle is just off by, I don't know, you can't even tell how far, but they're off centered, and it just zips right back in. It's not even that it could have like an airplane could have redirected itself over, like it just zaps like right back over. They're all in the line, and one by one they disappear up into the cosmos.
Wow.
And I'm like looking at my dad, like, did everybody else just see this? My sons, like I think they were 7 and would have been like 4 at the time. So they're like paying attention, but they're like, whoa, what was that? We have no idea. Like, I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not the only one that just saw that. Then my dad and I like really start riffing. He's like telling me all these stories, like Joshua Tree and all these other experiences he's had. He's like, yeah, of course they're here. Of course they're here. I'm like, I know they're here, but I experience them in a consciousness. They will show in physical form, but not that physical.
Right.
And it was shortly after that, then the Council of Light started to delineate themselves separately from the Council of Seven Sisters, where I was like, oh my gosh, I was thinking it was just it was just higher self, just a consciousness. Like, no, this is galaxy. This is energy. This is physical back and forth. It was wild. Oh, did you freeze? Okay, here.
My goodness. Yeah, we froze for just a sec. I think we're good now.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple questions. Did you have any sense that like the stuff you and your dad were talking about like brought them in? Did you have any messages come in, like any channeled, connection around that event that you can remember? Or do you think it was just purely like, we're going to give you a show to validate, the connections you guys have already been feeling?
Yeah. So it would have been 2020, and it would have been in the thick of COVID, because that's why I remember now why my husband didn't go. He was working, he's a nurse. And it was the thick of COVID, and my dad and I have always, I mean, anybody listening, by all means, whatever you believe is whatever you believe. I feel like those who are called to your podcast are going to be on a frequency that knows that there's more to what we experienced the last several years than just this virus. And my dad and I were speaking about like this time of what's going to happen in 2022, of like this hardship, this dark night of the soul, the crash of the economy again, like the dollar and all these things and all these like planned events that we're witnessing now come to light. So I would assume that probably very confirmation that what we were riffing on, what we were channeling, what we were talking about was very much what was going to come to light.
Okay, that's interesting. That's super interesting. Because like we were talking about earlier, it's like one of those moments to pay attention to what we were thinking about, talking about, like what drew them in that moment. So you mentioned your dad has had previous experiences. What were those like? Like, has he had conscious contact? Is he an abductee? Like, what's his story?
Probably. So my dad is a very interesting character. My dad has had several near-death events where he has literally died, crossed over, and been sent back. The first time when he was 3 years old, he was ran over by a tractor, a hay baler. and he was 3. He was dead on a table. And he will tell you so clearly the story that he remembers running through this hall of this building, which he knows now was the hospital. He's running through the halls, and it's very crazy around him. And he sees an angel. He sees a figure, but it's very divine that's guiding him, that like brings him to this one door. And so he stops in front of the door and he sees himself. And everybody's coming out of the door. The nurses, the staff are coming out of this room. And except for my grandma, his mom, and this one physician. And my parents are from this small rural town in Iowa. And he said it was an Asian man who was working on him. And that's not common. You can't just make that up. You can't just say like whatever. I mean, you can just say, but it's for him to be so specific that it was this Asian man. He was wearing some sort of pendant, he was saying. And they were the only 2 that were in his room that were still, my grandmother was weeping and this doctor was doing CPR on him. And all the other staff was walking out of this room. And he said the angel turned to him and said, "It's not your time. You have to go back." And my dad is like, he will tell you, he's like, he didn't want to come back. He's like, this was the most amazing experience he'd ever had. I mean, he was 3, but so the angel said, "No, your work is not done. You have to go back." And so he comes back and he's in the hospital for almost 3 months, in a full body cast. And after that point, he said like he had no fear of death. He had no fear of living. He had no fear of death. He had no fear of anything because he knew the power and the magic that existed beyond us.
And that's a really young age to like come to that realization or to just have that knowing, that's that's really unique.
It's very special, but he became just a big old troublemaker. He had no fear. So he to the fullest. I mean, you ask and he has done it. But after that, he had brain damage. So he's dyslexic. He couldn't read or write. And so, that was a big problem for me. He didn't learn to read until I was little. But like I said, he became a big troublemaker, became this fearless, like, F everything, you guys have no idea kind of guy with chip on his shoulder versus like, let's bring peace and love to the world. And so then he had another experience when he was in a motorcycle accident, the same experience. Angel showed up, said, "It's not your time. You have to go back. Your work's not done." He always will say, like, he made it very specific that his work isn't done, whatever his work was. He knew that he could channel after that and relay information, but he's dyslexic. He has learning impediments or impairments. And so that was before I was born. And then he had another experience when I was about 8 or 9, where he let his appendix rupture, became gangrenous, became septic, and he was in the ICU. And they were all like, "You need to prepare yourself. Like, is this going well?" And so we're in there like ready to say our goodbyes. And again, he said, like, the angels showed up, they all showed up and said, like, "You need to get your life together. Your work isn't done." And so that's a lot of how my upbringing is he has this understanding of the world. He has an understanding of the human body, the human anatomy. He's very much like the medical medium, or even the Jersey Shore medium, where he would just walk up to people in a store and say like, "Hey, you got to get your liver checked out," like, or "Your grandma said this and you need to do that." And that's how he found Gary Young. He was very good friends with Gary Young, who started doing living oils. That's how they found like the Gerson therapy. When my grandmother had breast cancer, they went to Tijuana and did the Gerson therapy. This was like before juicing was cool. This was before smoothies were cool and auras were cool. Like crystals, like, there was always an angel present. And when you're little, when you're young, you're like, "Man, you guys are crazy." Like, yeah, like it's cool at first, and then you become a teenager and it's not so cool. And you're in Iowa and you're the only person not eating meat and potatoes.
You're the only person seeing angels. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I kind of revolted. Like, I knew that was always a part of me and I never turned it off, but I went the more Western medical route. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to find a cure for cancer. I wanted to do all these things. And I kept hitting those roadblocks where it's like, "No, this isn't going to work. Like, we're trying to pivot you in a new direction," but I kept forcing. And I remember after I had finished my master's, like, I mean, I was in full burnout, adrenal fatigue, hormones, cycle, everything was just crashing. And my husband and we were trying to get pregnant, but I wasn't having a cycle. I wasn't having, I mean, I was losing my hair. I was like gaining all this weight. I was like all these things. And I had all these doctors telling me like, it's not going to happen naturally. Like, oh, it's just your thyroid or it's just this. I'm like, no, like I hear what you're saying, but there's something more. And so I told my dad, I'm like, okay, I surrender. I surrender. Tell me everything you know. I'm re-listening. I'm listening again. And I'm taking what I know from my training and I'm going to implement it with what I've experienced as a child. And I literally took 1 month for my cycle to return after almost 3 years. It was 2.5 years.
It's like as soon as you said yes to spirit, like as soon as you said yes to the path, things got back in alignment. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we did all of these things. He used these oils, he used just energy work. And yeah, my cycle came back within a month. And I didn't know it at that time, but I had gotten pregnant the next month. I just thought my cycle didn't return because I had been so long and been so off, which I had a miscarriage. And to me, that was, it was mournful. Absolutely. I want to be very sensitive to those who have had a miscarriage. But for me, in my experience, it was very energizing. It was very much, oh my gosh, it worked. I was like, told my dad, like, I am fully listening. Tell me everything. Like, I know that this works. I knew that there was something else to this whole equation. And so him and I are working on taking in all of his information, all of his experiences, pairing it with what I had as a trained, my background's in sports medicine and my master's is in behavioral science and in kinesiology. So pairing those two together, and it was only a couple months later that I got pregnant with my first kiddo. And what's really fun about that is I knew it was the same child who had come before. I knew it was the same soul, because when people would ask me like, like, what is it? Who is it? When are they coming? All these things, like, what are you feeling? And I said, he's coming 2/7. And my birthday is 2/7. I said, I don't think he's coming on my birthday. I think he's coming 2/7 as in January 27th. I think he's coming 27 versus 2/7. And so I said, yeah, he's coming January 27th. And I said, he's going to come at 1:43. And I was working at a school then. I was teaching at a high school. And so we all did this fun little bet, everybody throws money into a pot and you're like, yes, whoever gets the closest wins the pot. And my first son came on January 27th at 2:43.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I won $110 and it was just like, I just knew he was coming back. Like I knew that it wasn't this like sad moment, which to empathize with any woman who has had a miscarriage, to empathize with them, but also know like there's more to the story and that they don't just evaporate to the wind. It's no soul, no person just evaporates into the wind. There's so much more, but you're being asked for more. You're being asked for more responsibility, more trust, more in this physical body, in this like external auric field. You're being asked for more and to lean in, to trust. And now I'm trying to remember why I came to that. My dad. Yeah, there we are. I was taking everything in that he said. I was like, he could tell me about the energy of the liver and he could tell me on this physical level of what the liver was doing, but it was like I could take his knowing from something else, a higher sense, a calling, a intuition, whatever you want to call it, source, and I could put it in this physical field. I could put it into, okay, I have credentials, I have a license, I have these things where my dad is a very what's the word? He's got a grudge. He's got a chip on his shoulder. Like nobody listens to him. He's always saying like, oh, the universe is so much bigger and all like, but all these humans don't listen to me. So he's got this chip. And I'm like, okay, well, let's channel together and I'll relay the message to this person, or I will do the physical work. So when he has been told by the angels that his work's not done, I believe that I'm his work. I have other siblings and they're also very tapped in, but I'm doing what my dad did on a whole other level. I'm bringing the chemicals of the oils into play with the energy of them. I'm bringing the herbs. I'm bringing my credentials and my experience and my training and speaking to it on an energetic level as well. So it's not intimidating to people. It's not this stranger came up to you in Walmart and said,
Right.
like,
Right. That's
not doing all right. You need to get a scan. Like, I am like, hey, let's just listen together.
Oh, I think that's so beautiful though, that he has been such a pivotal part of you getting onto your right path, like you finding your destiny. Like it's like his work was to help you find your destiny and to really like integrate like all of your gifts into like who you are now as a person and leader and healer. I think that's such a cool story. And I, before we're almost out of time, I feel like we could just keep talking forever. So we might have to do another one soon. So before we wrap up though, I want to touch on what you were talking about around fertility and going back again to the holistic system. And I think that came up for a reason, because there may be people watching or, connecting with us now who might need support in that area, or might just be looking for support that is complementary to other medical, work that's going on for them. And you do a lot of work in this area with women who are seeking pregnancy and who are, going through that journey themselves. And like you've been through a really profound journey yourself.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to maybe just briefly, touch on that and what you can offer women and anyone listening who might be interested in connecting with you.
Yeah. So yes, I specialize in women's health. And what I do is, like I said, I'm just a really good listener, and I will listen to the physical body, I will listen to the energetic body, and then I will listen to the collective. And what kind of, I think, dropped me on the map, so to speak, is I can connect women with the soul that's chosen them. Like, we don't choose our babies choose us. And there's a reason why there's a disconnect, and not to put blame on anyone. This reason not being blamed, this reason being that they may not be ready, or this physical body isn't ready, or this emotional body isn't ready. And so we can bring awareness to where the disconnect is. And oftentimes it is just acknowledgement. Like, there's been so many magical experiences of women just simply needing to know that they have been chosen, and we've all been chosen. Even if we have sovereignty, so we can say, look, I'm all done. I'm good. Thank you. But like, or I don't really feel like I want any. So like, we have sovereignty and we have choice. But what's been so magical is simply making that connection allows that woman to find what it is that is the disconnect. And a lot of times it is in this physical body, whether that's been toxins or emotional traumas or things that need to be brought to the surface and moved through, connected through nutrients and herbs and oils, or just through energy work, by simply creating the connection that, yeah, there's a male who's waiting for you, that's chosen you. They're just waiting for this or this, or, like, I don't know if it's the partner that you have. Like, sometimes it's that, like, this soul's not chosen both of you. The soul has chosen you. And that's why you and your husband, or you and your partner, are having issues, because it's not going to be. That's very, very seldom. It's mostly just like, you know what, you've been on birth control forever. We've got to cleanse the body. We've got to detox. Or you've had emotional beliefs that become your reality that we need to reprogram and clear out. And then all of a sudden, boom, baby's here. And oftentimes it will be very specific of when that baby's coming. And that's been even more fun, of like, yeah, you've just got 6 months and that baby's going to be here. And so then if in 6 months, like, you just get to play, like, you just get to romp around with your partner for 6 months, have the most fun you can, and enjoy the experiences and the intimacy with you and your partner. And in 6 months that soul's coming. Then it's like, you lift yourself in vibration, you connect with the universe. It's not this, like, it's not going to happen to me, it's right. Something's wrong with me. It's just, it's just when. So but there is a lot of talk on the physical body. I do a lot of the channeling of what is happening, if there's PCOS, endometriosis, of how, what, when, where, why, and how.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you're really able to dig into all the layers that are present and help. It's like going back to what we talked about around trust, like help a woman get into a state of full trust and alignment so that the perfect divine timing just happens.
Exactly.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for this conversation, Chelsea. We have to wrap up. If anyone watching wants to connect with Chelsea, her information is in the notes below. You can find links to all of her offerings and ways you can connect with her for health, healing, intuitive guidance, spiritual counseling. Chelsea does it all. Chelsea is a spiritual jack of all trades, it feels like, in terms of what you can offer and how you can support people. So thank you for being here today and having this conversation. And we'll have to do another one because I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface on a lot of things.
Yes, barely. We have so much deeper to go, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Happy New Year.
I get you this work. So thank you. I'm so honored. Thank you.
It was so fun to be with you. Happy New Year.
Wow.
And for anyone watching who has not yet subscribed, so you don't miss any of our future episodes, and drop us a comment, let us know what resonated with you and what you want to hear more about if we have some more conversations soon. We're so glad you're here, and Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you next time.